Okay, so in today's live stream, I wanted to talk about financial independence. And I want to explain why, for me, saving for financial independence is just not an option. It is something that I think is so important. And I think, especially during this time when maybe we forget about financial independence, I want to talk about it again and just kind of get people thinking about financial independence and why I think everyone should be working towards it. So if you're new here, my name is Veronia. I'm a money coach, and essentially I help people to save more money and start investing. So let me first just kind of talk through what financial independence is, especially if you have heard of the term but you're not really sure. And for me personally, when it comes to financial independence, I think of being financially independent when I don't have to rely on one sole income to pay for my bills. So I don't have to rely on a 9 to 5 job in order for me to pay on my bills. I will be financially independent if I have investments or assets literally paying for my lifestyle, paying for my bills. So when it comes to financial independence, it's not about just like working for money. It's about money working for you and then using that money to now pay for your lifestyle and pay for your bills. So for me, the reason why I wanted to become financially independent, and I think I heard about this back in probably 2018. This was when I started like focusing more on my personal finances and thinking about just money in general. I wanted to become financially independent because I remember being at my first graduate job, and it was like, you know, my first big girl job, and I was like so excited, and it was working in corporate. So I thought like, I made it. I literally thought I'd made it. I thought I'd gone to school, gone to a good university, did my master's, and now I was in this big corporate job. But when I started working, like after a few weeks, I was kind of just asking myself like, is this it? Like, is this what I now need to do for the next 40 to 50 years? And then after that, I just, retire. And I remember I had like my director who was working these insane hours, like working long, would be coming in early, leaving late. And I was just thinking, is that what you have to do? Like, the more responsibility that you have, do you now need to put in more hours? And being aware that like most of the time you don't get paid extra for those hours, like especially if you're working in the private sector, it just doesn't happen. So I was literally thinking to myself, do I actually want that? Do I want to keep doing this for the next 40 to 50 years? And especially when I was thinking about, the person's family, like they had kids at the time, just the fact that they didn't get to see them that often because they were so busy working hard at their job. And my question was, are they doing this because they have no choice? Because they have to pay bills? So when I started, thinking about financial independence and learning about it, I realized that no, there are people that don't have to work as a necessity. Like, they are independent in that they don't necessarily have to work in a job in order for them to pay for their bills. And so for me, that was huge. I was like, oh, if I can get to a point where I'm financially independent and I don't have to necessarily depend on my 9 to 5 to pay for my bills, I could get to a point where I may decide that I don't actually want to work all of these long hours. I want to take some time out. I want to spend more time with family. So becoming financially independent was such a huge thing for me because I realized like I just didn't want to live that type of life. So I remember when I obviously started going on the journey and I started thinking, okay, what do I need to do to like become financially independent? In my case, I first had a lot of debt, so I knew I needed to pay that off first, and then I could start saving up for, becoming financially independent and learning how to invest and things like that. And I remember just going through that journey thinking, this isn't normal. Like, this saving and investing and like working to pay off debt just isn't normal. This is new. Like, people don't do this. But it was so important for me because I realized that even if I'm not at the point where I'm financially independent, just going on the journey was probably even like almost better than even just being financially independent, because being on the journey of learning how to save, learning how to invest, being able to like pay off my debt, that has helped me so much. And I'm actually so thankful to God that like he put that in my mind, because I realized that being debt free, for example, meant that I didn't have to like focus on, thinking about, oh my gosh, what am I going to do if I'm going to lose my job? How am I going to pay, make my debt repayments? How am I going to pay, how am I going to pay for my bills? Being on the journey allowed me to save up for an emergency fund where if something happened, I had money to pay for it. Like there was times where before that, something happened to my car and I would have to ask people and ask to borrow money from them because I didn't have money, because I'd spent all that money. So for me, the journey of financial independence is equally as important as, becoming financially independent. Yeah, exactly. It's an uphill battle and it's all about the journey. So one of the things that happened to me as well that I realized, like even just being on the journey was so important, was when I was working in my past 9-to-5 corporate job and they were making redundancies left, right, and center. And one of the key things I knew was that people were genuinely worried because they were asking themselves, how am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to pay my mortgage? How am I going to pay for all my essential bills? How am I going to pay for groceries? And I think one of the biggest things that helped me was realizing that because I'd got to a point where I was on the journey to become financially independent, I actually had cash. I had an emergency fund. I was already starting to invest. So I wasn't even worried about my job making me redundant. I literally just was not worried, because I was like, okay, if they make me redundant, I have money. I can sustain myself until I maybe find something else. And I think having that peace was just crazy to me. Like realizing that I had money just sitting in my account was crazy, because I realized that many people weren't in that position, and many people who were also senior people who had probably made twice, if not 3 times more than me, because at that time I was not making that much money anyway. I was making like 27k. But knowing that those people would still be struggling even more than me because they weren't necessarily on the journey to financial independence. So that's why I say, like, for me, saving for financial independence is not an option. Because yes, like, not being able to depend on your job to pay bills is great. Like, having that opportunity would be great. But for me, the biggest thing is the fact that it can bring that security, because then I'm like, okay, if something happens to my work and, they make redundancies left, right, and center, that's fine, because I can at least sustain myself until I find something else. And I won't need to be worrying about trying to find any other job, because I know that I can at least sustain myself for a few months. So it's really important to be thinking about financial independence if you haven't done that, not just for, like the end destination, but just the fact that the journey can help you when it comes to your finances. Yes, the lessons where the gems are, exactly. Like, I've learned so many lessons just being on this journey. And it was so interesting because I remember 2 years ago, I decided to take a career break. And one of the questions that people asked me at work was, how are you going to afford it? And they literally asked me, they were like, oh, okay, like, because they knew I was married, they'd be asking me, oh, what does your husband do? And I'd be thinking, what kind of question is that? Why are you asking me what my husband does? And they were asking that because they thought that my husband was this, rich guy where I could just sponge off him, and that was the reason why I was taking the career break, because I could just live off of his income. And I was just like, no, I have savings. What do you mean? I literally was so confused. And it was because, again, they just weren't on that journey. So for me to take a few months off and have savings, it was wild to them. Like, they could not understand it. And I remember even one colleague came to me and she was like, oh, I could never do that. I have a mortgage to pay. And I was like, in my head, I was like, well, you could if you had savings. Like, if you knew how to save, you could do that. So truly being on the journey to financial independence has just helped me so much. And yes, it is foreign and it will be foreign to a lot of people. But I think that for me, it's just not an option, because not only is the destination going to be sweet, but the journey itself, like, I've been able to do so much just by being on the journey. So I'm saying this to say, just to encourage you, that even though like your circumstances may be different, like even a few years ago when I started working towards financial independence, I had 16k in debt. I had 16k in debt, but I still decided I was going to start working towards financial independence. I still made that decision and I still started working towards it, even though I had a maxed out overdraft and I had a car loan which was paying over 11% in interest. I still decided to go on the journey because I realized that it just wasn't an option for me. It just literally wasn't an option. So for me, like, if you're someone who's decided, okay, what do I do? Like, if I want to, start thinking about financial independence, what should I, start thinking about? Think about, what does financial independence mean for you? Like, why do you want to be on this journey? Why do you want to get to a point where you have investments paying for your lifestyle, paying for your bills? Why is that important to you? For me, it was because I didn't want to have to work at a job for 40 to 50 years, depending on an employer who could potentially make me redundant like that. I didn't want that. I wanted to be in control of my lifestyle. I wanted to be able to get to a point where I have the option to work and I have the option not to work if I want to. Like, if I feel like God's calling me to do something else, I would love to have the option to do that. So that's why I decided financial independence was just so important. Yeah, someone, you might want to travel. You might want to travel to so many different places. You may want to start, to be there for your family a lot more. There are so many different reasons why people want to become financially independent, but you have to ask yourself first, like, what does that mean for you? And then you can start thinking about, okay, well, how much would I initially need to become financially independent? Like, how much would my bills be so that I can make sure that I work towards having enough money to pay for my bills? When you decide, okay, this is what you want, that's when you can start thinking about, well, how much am I going to need? And that will then help you think about, okay, well, what do I need to do? What do I need to save for? What do I need to invest for? But just really taking the time to think about what financial independence means for you is like the first step. And then you can start thinking about, okay, what does that mean in numbers? So I just wanted to go on live just to talk about that, because I think, especially with things, becoming more expensive and there's so much doom and gloom, especially if you're in the UK, like, it's a mess. Let's be honest, like, it's a mess. But I still think that it's so important for us to think about what things that we can actually control. It's so important for us to think about, what we still feel like we need to be working towards. So yes, the economy may be crazy, but at the end of the day, there are still things that we can do to, continue to work, to continue to progress, to continue to do better in our lives. So yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about. I see a couple of questions. And again, if you've got any questions, do let me know. Do you get dividends? Yes. So I do receive some dividends. When I do my investing, my whole portfolio isn't in just dividend paying companies. And if you don't know what dividends are, basically it's kind of money that companies will give their shareholders. So people that own shares in their companies, the companies, if they make profits, they may decide to share it out to their shareholders and just give out money. And so I get money because they decide to give out money. So yeah, that can also be used to help fund your financial independence, because you may get to a point where you have loads of these companies giving you money and that can fund your lifestyle. So yes, the joy of investing. I feel like 2,000 a month is a good start. Then it's about scaling. Yeah, exactly. And I would say it's all kind of dependent on your personal lifestyles as well. Like 2,000 may be enough for one person, but it may be too little for someone else. Someone's, essential bills may be like 4K or 5K. So it kind of depends on like your personal circumstance. But for example, for me, I think 2K a month would be enough. How do you do dividend investing in the UK? So when it comes to investing and dividend investing specifically, again, you really want to think about your goals. So you really want to think about, okay, well, what are you going to be investing for? Because I think that's one of the key mistakes that a lot of people do, is they just kind of want to start investing because they've been told, oh, I need to start investing. But what I would say is you need to be clear on what you're investing for first. So are you investing for financial independence? Are you investing for things like retirement? Okay, great. So if you're investing for that, what are the key things that you need to be investing in for you to help you get there? If you decide that I want to be investing in companies that do give out dividends, so that do give out that cash, well, then that's when you'll start to think about, okay, what kind of companies do I want to invest in? And then you'll be thinking about, okay, well, where do I want to invest? Like, what platform do I want to invest through? So you can't just like go to a company. Like, I can't just go to Apple and be like, give me some shares, please. I can't do that. I have to go through a broker. I have to go through a platform to allow me to actually invest in that company. So then you'll just need to find out, okay, what platform works for me? And then you can now start thinking about, okay, well, what companies do I want to invest in? There are also things like funds. So you can actually invest in a group of companies that also give dividends as well. So yeah, there's a lot, but that's why I say, like, there are many different companies, there are different funds, but again, that's why it kind of depends on your specific goals, and also I would say your attitude to risk as well. Like, how comfortable are you at taking risk? How comfortable are you with investing in certain things? If you don't like to take a lot of risk, then you may decide that actually you don't want to invest in just one company, you want to invest in a whole load of different companies. But if you don't mind taking that much risk, then you may decide that you want to just invest in a couple of companies. But then you're going to have to do a lot more research, and you're going to have to be comfortable if that company doesn't do well and becomes bankrupt. You have to be okay with that. So it's really thinking about, again, what you're working towards, and also thinking like, what are you comfortable with as well? I've heard of a group thing. Is it called ETFs? Yes. So basically, when it comes to, I feel like I'm giving like I'll give a mini investing masterclass, but I do have more videos on investing. But when you essentially invest, you can, especially if you're investing through the stock market, specifically, this is what I'm talking about. You can invest in individual companies. So you could decide to invest in Apple or Tesla or Microsoft or McDonald's. I'm not giving financial advice. I'm not telling people what to invest. But as an example, you can invest through individual companies. However, what you could also do is you could invest in a range of different companies. So rather than you investing in one company, you're investing in a group of companies. And what these are called are index funds or ETFs. So what a lot of those funds do is they will actually just track the performance of those group of companies. So if you have like 100 or 200 companies in that group, what a fund will do, so for example, an index fund, is it will track the performance of those companies. So if the overall performance goes up, then your fund will go up. And if the performance goes down, then your fund will go down. So depending on, again, your goals and how comfortable you are, will then depend on if you maybe choose to invest in an individual company, or if you decide to invest in a group of companies, like, you know, an index fund or an ETF. So hopefully that makes sense. I just kind of gave a little mini masterclass, but I definitely have more videos on that. Yeah, you do, like, one of the things about investing is you really have to do your research as well. And it's when it comes to investing, it is not a get rich quick scheme. Like, when I'm talking about investing, for me, investing is because I'm doing that to work towards financial independence. And that's a few years away. That's not today, that's not tomorrow, that's not in 6 months. So when you're investing and you're doing your research, your mindset should be that I'm going to be doing this for the long term. I'm going to be doing this for at least maybe 5 years. It is not like within the next 6 months, or, you know, within the next couple of days. Like, that's not really how investing works. So it's really important to, you know, kind of do your research on that. But anyway, I digress. I think I'm gonna leave it there unless there are any other questions. But yeah, that part of investing obviously kind of helps when it comes to thinking about financial independence. But Yes, 5 to 10 years minimum. It's like uni. Yeah, exactly. It's basically like uni. In fact, actually, I was only in uni for 3 years. So, it's a long time, but when it comes to financial independence, you're not going to become, financially independent in a day anyway. So for me, it kind of makes sense to marry that up. So marry the investing to help you become financially independent, knowing that it's probably going to take you a few years. So yeah, I'm going to leave it there. Obviously, if you ever want more support when it comes to, again, learning how to invest, learning how to save much more money so that you can, work towards financial independence, I do offer one-on-one coaching. So if you want more information about that, definitely check out Boss Finance Academy, or you can DM me as well if you want to book a call to learn more about one-on-one coaching. But yeah, I'm going to leave it there, guys. Thank you so much for hearing my little rant on financial independence, and I hope that you'll be thinking about financial independence much more soon. Thanks, guys. Bye.